The majority of parents know social media is bad for their kids, and now they want lawmakers on Capitol Hill to do something about it. Joining us this morning, the president of Parents Defending Education, Nicole Neily. Nicole, always good to see you. Good morning to you. So the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee finally held a hearing on the harmful effects of social media with our children, and there's this really strong push to pass the Kids Online Safety Act. Tell me more about this hearing and the witnesses that spoke about cyberbullying at this hearing.
Sure. So this happened last week, and three of the particularly powerful witnesses that spoke were actually mothers of children who had been cyberbullied to death. And they asked Congress to intervene, to take steps to actually proactively make sure that social media companies are protecting children online. So we'll see how this turns out, but it really seemed that there was a lot of sympathy and also a lot of bipartisan support for this initiative. So.
And your organization also sent letters to Senators Blackburn and Blumenthal asking them to investigate data mining of America's children in schools. Can you explain what's happening in our classrooms? Because most parents probably have no idea this is even happening right now.
Right. So children are being asked surveys all of the time by guidance counselors, by their homeroom, by their schools, deeply, deeply personal and intrusive questions about politics, about drug use, about things like that. And under something called the PPRA, the Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment, actually parents are both supposed to be made aware of these surveys and also given the opportunity to opt their children out of this. And I think a concern that we have heard from parents across the country is, first, they're not being told these surveys are given. And then once these surveys are given, what happens to the information? A huge amount of data is being gathered. And then, what is happening to that? How is that being stored? Because sadly, on average, 2 school districts a day are hacked across the country. And so how is this information being stored and then, frankly, used against us at some point in the future?
This past fall, your organization also polled parents about social media, and not surprisingly, 2/3 of parents say it has had a negative impact on their teen or their child. What else did you find out in this poll?
Sure. There are a number of platforms that worry parents deeply. The first is that beginning with Snapchat, it is actually the least trusted platform for parents. They don't want their children to use it unsupervised. About 74% of parents don't want their children to use Snapchat unsupervised. Going down from that, then Instagram is the next most kind of questionable platform for parents. TikTok, certainly, and lots of parents have questions and concerns about TikTok. They realize that TikTok is owned by China, that the data is being sent over to them. And so, yeah, there are real concerns about both what children have access to as well as, how that information is being used and gathered.
Your organization also filed a complaint with the U.S. Department of Education, the Office of Civil Rights, against the Olympia School District in Washington State. Now, that complaint, as I understand, focuses on the school district creating and hosting race-segregated groups, also known as affinity groups. Tell us more about this and also the complaint.
Sure. Sadly, this is a trend that we're seeing across the country where schools are, under the guise of trying to create safe spaces for students, are racially segregating children, which is a little bit appalling because, frankly, it was wrong in 1950 and it's still wrong in 2023 to separate children and treat them differently on the basis of skin color. So it may be for good intentions, it may be for malign intentions, but at the end of the day, it is wrong and it is immoral, and we believe also unconstitutional for these districts to be separating these children and putting them into different groups and offering them different programming based on immutable characteristics.
And before I let you go, I want to talk about Title IX and the Biden administration trying to allow transgender athletes to compete. The final rules are likely to be extremely controversial, as we know, and challenged both on the merits as well as the procedural grounds. What is Parents Defending Education doing about this?
Sure, we're keeping a very close eye on this. This is something that Betsy DeVos rewrote the Title IX rules. They introduced a notice of proposed rulemaking in 2018, and then they released the final rules in May of 2020. When DeVos released her rules, there were about 124,000 comments submitted by the public. It took them 18 months to fully review and incorporate all of that feedback into their process. What is interesting this time is that the Biden administration received 235,000 comments, almost double what the Trump administration received. Yet they're planning on rolling out this rule in a shorter time period. And so there are, I think, real questions about whether they're actually really even integrating public comments into this process, and then what will that look like? The most controversial aspect is that they want to integrate sexual orientation and gender identity into this 1972 statute that talks about discrimination on the basis of sex. And I think a lot of people, a lot of parents have expressed concerns that, look, if you want to do that, that's something that should be done through Congress and not through a pen and a phone, sadly.
President of Parents Defending Education, Nicole Neily, always great to see you. Thanks for joining us this morning. We appreciate it. Have a great weekend.